Hello everybody, it's me, Fee, White Zulu, and welcome to another recording of my autobiography of the same name. And if you recall, I was still in bed with measles the last time I left you. So this is called White Zulu, Chapter 41, third form, which is Standard 7, and a lot of mischief. Only when somebody came by did I whip my head out from under the blankets and pretend I was dozing. My head throbbed, my eyes stung, and sometimes I had to wipe my watering eyes away with the edge of the sheet to clear them enough to be able to continue reading as the letters swam in front of them. But I persevered for the 5 days, and most nights I was shut in the room with no light. When one book was finished, I'd nip out and grab another one. Once 5 days were up and Mum had decided I was well enough to have the curtains open, she let me have a little bit more light, but I was still forbidden to read. I was also still to be left in quarantine, although the extremely itchy spots had come out and I was covered from head to toe in them. My scalp to the soles of my feet were a mass of raised red measles, which drove me nearly mad with the constant itching, and even though I was forbidden to scratch them, I did, and made my skin bleed. On one occasion, Mum got Evelina, my old nanny, to put some calamine lotion on the worst ones, and that was bliss, as the coolness of the stuff soothed the fieriness of the rash. And she left the bottle out on top of the medicine cabinet, meaning to tell Evelina to apply it again whenever I needed it, but got sidetracked in her own world of her garden and forgot, even though I asked her on the very few occasions I saw her. I was really ill with the measles. What was I to do at the age of 13? I just read that. And can't remember ever being that sick for so long. I stayed in bed and read furtively for the required 10 days and was then allowed up. I was feeling so much better by then and was more than ready to resume my normal life of riding and swimming and everything else we did in the holidays, but found I was terribly weak and could barely shuffle to the front veranda, where I sat in the deep shade in a cane armchair and read books legitimately this time. My eyes had not recovered from their prolonged strain of reading while I was so ill and under such bad conditions, and they still ached after a while, but I kept quiet about that. I didn't want to have any more books confiscated and be forbidden to read again. Third form, Standard 7. Back to school again. This time it was on my 14th birthday. As usual, Mum and Dad went skiing again for the entire 6 weeks. Finally, I'd broken through the second form barrier and had reached the third form, and there was no more fagging. Third form was nicer as we were no longer the juniors and picked on by girls and staff alike, nor did we have any responsibilities either. So we were pretty much free to get on with normal school life. And then I fell in with a bad lot. There was a small group of girls, some of whom had arrived as new girls this year, and the others I'd had as friends from the year before. A couple of these were Joburg girls and had never known the discipline of boarding school before. They kicked at the traces, and so did I. Two of them were expelled that term for running away. One night our house matron came to us just after supper time and asked me and a few of the girls I was with if we'd seen these two recently. I'd heard them discussing taking a knife from the kitchen after supper for something, but hadn't known what they wanted it for. I kept quiet. I wasn't going to shop anybody. The following morning, the lady warden, Dot, told the school at breakfast, while all kinds of exciting rumours flew around, that the two girls had been caught by the police who'd been sent out to search for them and had found them while they were trying to catch a train to Joburg at a small station near Hilton Road in the middle of the night. Ironically, it was a small, narrow-gauge steam engine pulling sugarcane and timber-laden trucks from the tiny station there and was not connected in any way to the main Durban to Johannesburg railway line at all. Both girls had been asked to leave, in other words, expelled. These days, it beggars belief that two 13-year-old white girls were able to wander around a tiny village in the pitch dark without coming to any harm. That left fewer of our little gang, but we made up for the lack of our numbers by our attempts to entertain ourselves, the others of the class, and try, not very hard, not to get into too much trouble. My best friend, a daughter of one of the masters at Hilton College, the boys' private boarding school about 5 miles away from St. Anne's, was particularly full of mischief. She managed to pack an air rifle and a box of pellets in her school trunk. And since we shared a 2-bed cubicle, of course I was in on her secret. We borrowed another girl's plastic inflatable teddy bear, a huge bright pink monstrosity, which she'd won at the Durban beachfront arcades and had proudly brought back to school to inflate and put on her bed. She had no idea we'd taken it. Third formers were allowed a couple more additions to their cubicles than just the china ornaments. We were also allowed a soft toy to keep on our beds. Excuse me. We took the inflated bear down to the back of the school bogs. This was a row of about 8 outdoor corrugated iron lavatories standing on their own behind the gym, which were for the whole school to use when we weren't in class or in our dorms. We set our purloined target up against the back of these foul-smelling outdoor lavatories and let fly with the pellet gun. Lying like snipers on our bellies in the grass, we took turns to fire at the bear to see who could pop it first. My friend and I were happily thus occupied when we heard screams and quickly got up to look and see what was going on, hiding the rifle in the long grass. What we hadn't realized was that the pellets which missed the bear were hitting the back of the toilets and pinging off the corrugated iron walls, and that a troop of second formers had been sitting there answering the call of nature. We never went to those toilets alone. They were just too spooky and were screaming about the noise. Should we use them for target practice? My friend said, indicating the second formers, As they raced back to the safety of the gym, some of them still pulling up their bloomers, I thought for a moment and said, why not? And we resituated ourselves in a better position, still hidden in the long grass like snipers, to lie in wait for the next lot who came. Sure enough, another little gaggle of girls eventually came to the bogs for a wee before the bell rang for afternoon prep, and my friend fired the first round. The result was even more spectacular as the little girls shrieked with fright and bolted back the way they came. Then reason suddenly came to us both as one of the girls screamed, "Somebody's shooting at us!" and ran off to the sixth form common room, full of prefects, which was dangerously close by, to tell the prefects in there what was happening. We both ran for our lives, trying to hide the rifle against our bodies, and somehow made it back unnoticed into McCrory House and the safety of our cubicle in the dorm. She hid the gun away, and we sat on our beds and stared at each other, wide-eyed with horror, realizing now quite what trouble we could have got into. We would have both been summarily expelled for bringing a gun to school, let alone being caught blatantly shooting at anybody. After that episode, I tamed my anarchistic activities to a bit of scrumping for green oranges from Dot's orchard, and cooking a dead pigeon we'd found in the gum plantation in the grounds near the hockey pitch. That's why my friend had brought the gun to school in the first place, to shoot us some nice plump rock pigeons. We took the dead bird along to the science lab and sort of gutted it, and then tried to roast it over a Bunsen burner. The smell of it wasn't the delicious flavour of roasting bird, but that of rotting, long dead pigeon, so we threw it away in the dustbin. Again, if we'd been caught, we'd have been in serious trouble, as nobody was allowed near the science lab, let alone loose with the Bunsen burners, at any time whatsoever. The year came and went fairly uneventfully after that. I didn't seem to have recovered fully from my measles, though. I was still very weak and had even less energy and stamina than before, and had to spend a fair bit of time in the sun again, resting with some made-up ailments. Sometimes I was lucky and got the day room. Other times I had the single, cheerless and ice-cold solitary ward designed for quarantined patients. This happened if I'd been a bit too imaginative with my symptoms. And now I'd started my periods too. The first time it happened took me completely by surprise. About a year previously, Mum had called me into her bedroom in the middle of the day. I was immediately suspicious and on my guard, as I had a far from clear conscience about many things, and thought I was in for a dressing down. But instead, she said to me something about having babies. I had no idea what she was talking about. She ummed and ahed and then said something else about white pads down there. I suddenly twigged and said, "Oh yes, I've already got one." She looked at me surprised and said, "Surely not." I ran to get my new school bathing costume and showed her the little bit of white material sewn into the gusset. "There," I said triumphantly, "that's one." "Oh no, I mean proper pads. Anyway, when it happens, call one of your sisters and she'll show you what to do." And that was that. No other information. I'd been feeling extra depressed in my first term of third form, and it started to get horrible sharp pains in my lower belly. The next thing I knew, I was bleeding. I stared at my stained white bloomers with dismay. What was happening? I called my older sister, who was in her last year there, and she briskly handed me from her own locker a paper bag full of soft pads called Dr. White's, with loops on either side, an elastic belt with 2 hooks, and a couple of pairs of rubber-lined pants. She showed me briefly and wordlessly what to do and left me to it. In those days, the subject was absolutely taboo, and even though it was an all-girls school and had a completely natural monthly event, nobody treated that time of the month as if it were everybody treated that time of the month as if it were a horrible secret disease, and if you had the curse, you had to keep absolutely quiet about it and pretend you didn't. The disposal of the pads had to become a subterfuge, even at home. Mum made us walk right around to the back of the house to shisa, which means burn, the things in the paella outside, so that the Zulu house staff didn't see us. It was such a shameful thing. That's enough for this time. I hope you enjoyed it, and there's plenty more to come. I want to thank John Moslane for being my producer and setting aside his Fridays to do this for me, and also Sean van Vuren, who uploads my videos faithfully twice a week. And I'm just glad that some of you are enjoying this. I do get lovely feedback, and I really appreciate that. So it's goodbye from me.